Chapter 12. A Strange Story of Jonathan Small. Very patient man was that inspector in the cab, for it was a weary time before I rejoined him. His face clouded over when I showed him the empty box. "There goes my reward," he said gloomily. "Where there is no money, there is no pay. This night's work would have been worth a tenner each to Sam Brown and the treasure of it. Mr. Thaddeus Sholto is a rich man," I said. "He will see that you are rewarded. Treasure or no." The inspector shook his head despondently, however. "It's a bad job," he repeated, "and so Mr. Assembly Jones will think." His forecast proved to be correct, for the detective looked blank enough when I got to Baker Street and showed him the empty box. They had only just arrived, however, Holmes and the prisoner, and he, for they had changed their plans so far as to report themselves at the station upon the way. My companion lounged in his armchair with his usual listless expression, while Small sat stolidly opposite him with a wooden leg cocked over the saddle. As I exhibited the empty box, he leaned back in the chair and laughed aloud. "This is your doing, Small," said Assam Jones angrily. "Yeah, I've put it away where you shall never lay a hand on it," he cried exultantly. "It is my treasure, and if I can't have the loot, I'll darn take good care that no one else does. I tell you that no living man has any right to it, unless it is three men who are in the Ottoman convict barracks and myself. I now know that I cannot have any use of it, and I know that they cannot. I've acted all through them as much as I can myself. It's been a sign of the fall with us always. Well, I know that they would have had me do just what I've done, throw the treasure into the Thames, rather than go to kith or kin, Sholto or Morstan. It was not to make them rich that it did for Atchment. To find the treasure where the key is, and where little tongue is. When I saw you at lunch, you must catch us, so put the loot away in a safe place. There are no rupees for you in this journey." "You are deceiving us, Small," said Assembly Jones sternly. "If you had wished to throw the treasure into the Thames, it would have been easier for you to have thrown the box and all." "Easier for me to throw and easier for you to recover," answered the shrewd sidelong. "That man that was clever enough to hunt me down is clever enough to pick an iron box from the bottom of the river. Now that they are scattered all over 5 miles or so, it may be a harder job. It went to my heart to do it, so I was half mad when you came up with us. However, there's no good grieving over it. I've had ups in my life, and I've had downs. But I've learned to not cry over spilled milk." "This is a very serious matter, Small," said the detective. "If you had helped justice instead of thwarting it in this way, you would have had a better chance at your trial." "Justice?" snarled the ex-convict. "A pretty justice? Whose loot is this, if not ours? Where is the justice that I should have to give up all those that have never earned it? Look how I have earned it. 20 long years in that fever-ridden swamp, all day at work under the mangrove tree, all night chained up in filthy convict huts, bitten by mosquitoes, racked with ague, bullied by every cursed black-faced policeman who loved to take it out of a white man. That was how I earned that Agra treasure. You talk to me of justice because I cannot bear to feel that I have paid this price only to another man enjoy it. I would rather swing a score of times or have one of Tonga's darts in my hide than live in a convict cell and feel that another man is in his ease in a palace with the money that should have been mine. Small had dropped his mask of stoicism, and all this came out in a wild whirl of words. While his eyes blazed and his handcuffs clanked together in the impassioned movement of his hands, I could understand, and I saw the fury and the passion of the man, that no groundless and no unnatural terror which was possessed of Major Sholto when he first learned that the injured convict was upon his track. You forget that we know nothing of all this, said Holmes quietly. We have not heard your story, and we cannot tell how far justice may originally have been on your side. Well, sir, you have been very plain spoken to me, though I can see that I have you and think that I have these bracelets on my wrists. Still, I bear no grudge for that. It is all fair and above board. If you still want to hear my story, I have no wish to hold it back. What I say to you is God's truth, every word of it. Thank you. You can put up the glass beside me here, and I'll put my lips to it as if I am dry. I'm a Worcestershire man myself, born near Persia. I dare say you would find a heap of Smalls living there now if you were to look. I've often thought of taking a look around there, but the truth is that I was never much of credit to my family. But I doubt they would be so very glad to see me. They're all steady chapel going folks, small farmers, well known and respected over the countryside, while I was always a bit of a rover. Yes, we get flashbacks. At last, however, when I was about 18, I gave them no more trouble, for I got into a mess over a girl. I could only get out of it again by taking the Queen's shilling and joining the 3rd Buffs, which was just starting for India. I wasn't destined to do much soldiering, however. I just got past the goose step and learned to handle my musket when I was a fool enough to go swimming in the Ganges. Lucky for me, my company sergeant, John Holder, was in the water at the same time, and he was one of the finest swimmers in the service. The crocodile took me, just as I was halfway across, nipped right off my leg as clean as the surgeon could have done it, just above the knee. With that, the shock and loss of blood, I fainted, and should have been drowned if Holder had not caught hold of me and paddled for the bank. I was 5 months in the hospital over it, and when at last I was able to limp out of it, and the timber toe was strapped to my stump, I found myself invalidated out of the army and unfitted for any active occupation. I was, as you can imagine, pretty down on my luck at this time, for I was a useless cripple, though not yet in my 20th year. However, my misfortune soon proved to be a blessing in disguise. A man named Abel White, who was come out of there as an indigo player, wanted an overseer to work for his coolies and to keep them out of the work. He happened to be a friend of our colonel's who had taken an interest in me since the accident. To make a long story short, the colonel recommended me strongly for the post, and as the work was mostly been done on horseback, my leg was no great obstacle, for I had enough knee left to get a good grip on the saddle. What I had to do was to ride over the plantation, keep an eye on the men as they worked, and report to idlers. Pay was fair, I had comfortable quarters, and although I was content to spend the remainder of my life in Indian planting, Mr. Abel White was a kind man. would often drop into a little shanty and smoke a pipe with me. For white folk out here feel their hearts warm to each other when they never do. Well, I was never in luck's way long. Suddenly, without a note of warning, a great mutiny broke upon us. 1 month, India lay still and peaceful to all appearance, as Surrey or Kent. The next, there were 200,000 black devils let loose, and the country was a perfect hell. Of course, you know all about it, gentlemen, a deal more than I do. Very like, since reading is not out of my line. I only know what I saw with my own eyes. Our plantation was at a place called Motra, near the border of the northwest provinces. Night after night, the whole sky was alight with the burning bungalows. Day after day, with small companies of Europeans passing through the state with their wives and children, on their way to Agra, where were the nearest troops. Mr. Abel White was an obstinate. He had had it in his head that the affair had been exaggerated, and that it would be, they'd blow over as soon as it had sprung up. There he sat on his veranda, drinking whiskey pegs and smoking cheroots, while the country was in a blaze about him. Of course, we was struck by the country, and him and Dawson, who, with his wife, used to do the book work and the managing him. Well, one fine day the crash came. I had been away on a distant plantation and was riding slowly home in the evening, when my eye fell upon something all huddled together at the bottom of Steep Noah. I rode down to see what it was, and the cold struck me through the heart, and I found it was Dawson's wife, all cut into ribbons and half eaten by jackals. Dogs. A little farther up the road, Dawson himself was found lying on his face, quite dead, with an empty revolver in his hand, and four set boys lying across each other in front of him. I reined up my horse, wondering which way I should turn, but at that moment I saw thick smoke curling up from Abel Whitehouse's bungalow, and the flames beginning to burst through the roof. I knew then that I could do my employer no good, but would only throw my own life away if I meddled in the matter. From where I stood, I could see hundreds of Blackfeet, with their red coats still on their backs, dancing and howling around in the burning house. Some of them pointed at me, and a couple of bullets sang past my head. So I broke away in the paddy fields and found myself late and safe in the walls of Agra. As it proved, however, there was no great safety here either. The whole country was up like a swarm of bees. Wherever the English could collect their little bands, they just had the ground that their guns commanded. Everywhere else, they were helpless fugitives. It was a fight for the millions against the hundreds, and the cruelest part of it was that these men that fought against, horse, foot, and gunners, were our own picked troops, whom we had taught and trained, handling our own weapons and blowing our own bugle balls. At Agra, there were the 3rd Bengal Bolsters, some 6, and 2 troops of horse, and a battery of artillery. A volunteer corps of clerks and merchants had been formed, and this I joined, wooden leg and all. We went out to meet the rebels at Strawhurge early in July, and we beat them back for a time, but our powder gave out to fall back upon the city. Nothing but the worst news came to us from every side, which is not to be wondered at. For if you look up the map, you will see that we were right in the heart of it. Lucknow is rather better than 100 miles to the east. Kanpur is about as far to the south. From every point in the compass, there was nothing but torture, murder, and outrage. city of Agra is a great place, swarming with fanatics and fierce devil worshippers of all sorts. Our handful of men were lost among the narrow, winding streets. Our leader moved across the river then, therefore, and took up his position at the old fort of Agra. I don't know if any of you gentlemen have ever read anything about that old fort. It is a very queer place. The queerest that ever I was in, and I have been in some rum corners. First of all, it is enormous in size. I should think that the enclosure must be acres and acres. There is a modern part which took all our garrisons, women, children, stores, and everything else. Plenty of rooms over where nobody goes, and which is given it to scorpions and centipedes. It is all full of great deserted halls and winding passages, and long corridors twisting in and out, so that it's easy for folk to get lost in. For this reason, it was seldom that anyone went into it, though now and again a party with torches might go exploring. The river washes along in front of the old fort and so protects it, but on its sides and behind there are many doors. These had to be guarded, of course, and the old quarter, as well as which actually held our troops. We were short-handed, with hardly enough men to man the angles of the building and to serve the guns. It was impossible for us, therefore, to station a strong guard at every one of the innumerable gates. What we did was to organize a central guardhouse in the middle of the fort, to leave each gate under the charge of one white man, one or two natives. I was selected to take charge during certain hours of the night of a small isolated door upon the southwest side of the building. Two Sikh troopers were placed under my command, and I was instructed if anything went wrong to fire my musket, when I might rely upon him coming at once from the general guard. As the guard stood 200 paces away, however, and the space between us cut up the labyrinth and passages and corridors, I had great doubts as to whether they could arrive in time to be of any use in case of an actual attack. Well, I was pretty proud of having the small command given to me, since I was a raw recruit and a game like that. For 2 nights I kept the watch of the Punjabis. They were tall, fierce-looking chaps, Mohammed Sain and Abdullah Khan by name, both old fighting men, who had borne arms against us in the Chilean Walla. They could talk English pretty well, but I could get a little out of them. They preferred to stand together and jabber all night their queer, sick lingo. For myself, I used to stand outside the gateway, looking down on the broad, winding river, on the twinkling lights of the great city. The beating of drums and the rattle of tom-toms and the yells and howls of the rebels, drunk with opium and with bhang, were enough to remind us all night that our dangerous neighbors were just across the street. Every 2 hours, the officer of the night used to come around at all the points to make sure that all was well. The third night of my watch was dark and dirty, with a small driving rain. It was dreary work standing in the gates, hour after hour, in such weather. I tried again and again to make my Sikhs talk, but without much success. At 2 in the morning, the rounds passed and broke our for moments weariness of the nights. Finding that my companions would not be led into conversation, I took out my pipe and laid down my musket to strike a match. In an instant, the 2 Sikhs were upon me. One of them snatched my firelock up and leveled it at my head, while the other held a great knife to my throat and swore between his teeth that he would plunge it into me if I moved a step. My first thought was that these fellows were in league with the rebels, and that this was the beginning of an assault. If our door were in the hands of the sepoys, the palace must fall. and the women and children be treated as though they were common. Maybe you gentlemen think that I'm making out a case for myself, but I give you my word that when I thought of that, though I felt the point of the knife against my throat, I opened my mouth with the intention of giving a scream, if it was my last one, which might alarm the main guard. These men who held me seemed to know my thoughts, for even as I braced myself to it, he whispered, "Don't make a noise. The fort is safe enough. There are no rebel dogs on the side of the river." There was a ring of truth in what he said, and I knew that if I had raised my voice, I was a dead man. I could read it in the fellow's brown eyes. I waited, therefore, in silence, to see what it was they wanted from me. "Listen to me, Sahib," said the taller and fiercer of the pair, the one whom they called Abdullah Khan. "You must either be with us now, or must be silenced forever. The thing is too great a one for us to hesitate. Either your heart and soul with us on your oath on the cross of the Christians, or your body this night shall be thrown into a ditch, and shall pass over to our brothers in the rebel army. There is no middle way. Which is it to be, death or life? We can only give you 3 minutes to decide, for the time is passing and all must be done before the rounds come again." "How can I decide?" "You have not told me what you want. But I tell you now that if it is anything against the safety of the fort, I will have no truck of it, so you can drive home your knife and welcome. It is nothing against the fort," he said. "We only ask that to do what your countrymen come to this land for. We ask you to be rich. If you will be one of us this night, we will swear to you upon the naked knife, by the threefold oath which no Sikh has ever been known to break, that you shall have your fair share. The quarter of the treasure shall be yours. You can say no fairer." "But what is this treasure, then?" I asked. "I am ready to be rich as you can be, if you will but show me how it can be done." "Swear that," he said, "by the bones of your father, by the honor of your mother, by the cross of your faith, to raise no hand and speak no word against us, either now or afterwards." "I swear it," I answered, "provided that the fort is not endangered." "Then, my comrade, I will swear that you shall be quarter of the treasure, which shall be divided equally among the four of us." "There are but three," said I. "No, Dost Akbar must have his share. We can tell the tale to you when we meet. Do stand at the gates, Muhammad Seen, and give notice of their coming. Thing stands thus, Sahib. I tell you this because I know that you had oath binding on the fair deed, that we trust you. Had you been lying Hindu, those that swore by all the gods of their false temples, your blood would have been upon the knife, and your body shall be in the water. But the Sikh knows the Englishman. The Englishman knows the Sikhs. Hearken, then, to what I have to say. There is a Raja in the northern provinces who has such wealth, though his lands are small. Much has come to him from his father, and still more he has set by himself, for he is of a low nature, and hoards his gold rather than spend it. When the troubles broke out, he would be friends with both the lion and the tiger. To Sope, to Kun's Raj. Soon, however, it seems to him that the white man's day has come, for though all the land he could not hear anything but of their death and their overthrow, yet, being a careful man, made such plans that, come what might, half at least of his treasure should be left to him. That which was in gold and silver he kept by him in vaults of his palace, but the most precious stones and the choicest pearls that he has had put into an iron box, and sent it by a trusty servant who, under the guise of a merchant, should take it to the fort of Agra, there to lie until the land is at peace. Thus, if the rebels won, he would have his money. If the company conquered, his jewels would be saved too. Having thus divided his hoard, he threw himself into the cause of his sepoys, since they were strong upon his borders. By his doing this, mark you, Sahib, his property becomes the due of those who have true to their salt. This pretend the merchant who travels under the name of Ajmat is now in the city of Agra and desires to gain his way into the fort. He has with him as a traveling companion his foster brother, Dost Akbar, who knows his secret. Dost Akbar has promised this night to lead him to the side postern of the fort, and has chosen this one for his purpose. Here he will come presently, find the sign, myself waiting. The place is lonely, none shall know of his coming. The world shall know of his merchant Ahmed no more. The great treasure of the Raja shall be divided among us. What say you to it, Sahib? In Worcestershire, the life of man seems a great and sacred thing. But it is very different when there is fire and blood all around you. You have been used to meeting death at every turn. Whether Achmet, the merchant, lived or died was a thing as light as air to me. But at the talk about the treasure, my heart turned to it, and I thought of what I might do in the old country with it, and how my folk would stare when they saw their ne'er-do-well coming back with his pockets full of gold. I had, therefore, already made up my mind. Abdullah Khan, however, thinking that I was hesitant, pressed the matter more closely. Consider, Sahib, that if this man is taken by the commandant, he will be hung or shot, and his jewels taken by the government, so that no man will be better. Now, since we do the taking of him, we should not do the rest as well. The jewels will be as well as any of the company's coffers. There will be enough to make every one of us rich men and great chiefs. No one can know about this matter. Here we are cut off from all. What could be better for the purpose? Say again, then, say, whether you are with us, or if we must look upon you as an enemy. I am with you, heart and soul. So, it is well, said him that Firelight. See that we trust you for your word, like ours is not to be broken. We have now only to wait for my brother and the merchant. Does your brother know of what we will do? The plan is his. He's devised it. We will go to the gates and share the watch with Mahat's sign. The rain will still be falling heavily, for it is just to begin hard to the wet season. Brown, heavy clouds were drifting across the sky, and it was hard to see more than stonecast. Deep moat lay in front of our door, but the water was in places nearly dried up, and it could easily be crossed. It was strange to see me standing there with these two wild Punjabis waiting for a man who was coming to his death. Suddenly, my eye caught a glimpse of the shaded lantern at the other side of the minaret. It vanished among the mountain heaps and then reappeared again, slowly coming in our direction. There they are, I exclaimed. You will challenge him, Sahib, as usual. Spread up. Give him no cause for fear. Send us in. We shall do the rest while you stay guard. Have the lantern ready to uncover. We may be sure it's the thing. The light flickered onwards, stopping and advancing until we could see two dark figures upon the other side of the road. I let them scramble down the sloping banks, splash through the mire, climb halfway up to the gate before I challenged them. Who goes there? I said in a subdued voice. Friends, came the answer. I covered my lantern through a flood of light upon it. The first was an enormous thing. The black beard swept clearly down its cummerbund. Outside of a show, I've never seen so tall of a man. The other was a little fat brown fellow with a great yellow turban and a bundle on his head done up with a shawl. He seemed to be all the quiver for fear. His hands twitched as if he had been hurt, and his head kept turning to the left and to the right with two bright little twinkling eyes, like a mouse when he ventures out from its hole. It gave me chills to think of him. I thought of the treasure, my heart set as hard as flint against me. When he saw my white face, he gave a chirp of joy and came running up towards me. Your protection, Sahib, he panted. Your protection for an unhappy merchant Achmet. I have travelled across Rajputana, and I might seek shelter in the fort of Agra. I have been robbed and beaten and abused because I have been a friend of the company. It is a blessed night, this, when you see I am much more in safety. I and my poor possessions. What have you in the bundle? I asked. An iron box, he answered, which contains one or two little family matters which are of no value to others, but which I should not be sorry to lose. Yet I am not a beggar, and I shall reward you, young Sahib, your governor also, if you will give me the shelter I ask. I could not trust myself to speak longer with the man. The more I looked at his fat, frightened face, the harder did it seem that he would slay him in cold blood. It was best we got it over. Take him to the main guard, said I. 2-6 closing one behind on either side, and the giant walked behind while they marched in through the great dark gateways. Never was a man so compassed around with death. I remained at the gates, listening. I could hear the unmeasured tramp of their footsteps sounding through the lonely corridors. Suddenly it ceased, and I heard voices and a scuffle with the sound of blows. A moment later there came, to my horror, a rush of footsteps coming in my direction, the loud breathing of a running man. I turned my lantern down the long straight passage, and there was the fat man, running like the wind, with a smear of blood across his face, and close at his heels, bounding like a tiger, great black-bearded Six, with a knife flashing in his hand. I have never seen a man run so fast as that little merchant. He was gaining on the Six, and I could see that if he once passed me, Got the open air, he could save himself yet. My heart softened for him, but again the thought of the treasure turned me hard and bitter. Cast my firelock between his legs as he raced past, rolled over twice like a shot rabbit. Ere he could stagger to his feet, and the six was upon him, buried his knife twice in his side. Man never uttered a moan, nor moved a muscle, but lay where he had fallen. I think myself that he may have been broken his neck with the fall. You see, gentlemen, that I am keeping my promise. I am telling you every word of the business, just exactly as it happened, whether it is in my favor or not. He stopped. He held out his manacled hands for some whiskey and water, which Holmes had brewed for myself. I confess that I had now convinced the most horror of the man, not only for his cold-blooded business in which he had been concerned, even more for the somewhat flippant and careless way in which he narrated it. Her punishment was in store for him. I felt that he might expect no sympathy from me. Sherlock Holmes and Jones sat there with their hands upon their knees, deeply interested in the story, but the same disgust written upon their faces. You may have observed it, for there was a touch of defiance in his voice and the manner in which he proceeded. It was all very bad, no doubt, he said. I should like to know how many fellows in shoes who have had their refused to share this loot when they knew that they would have had their throats cut for the pains. Besides, it was my life, and when this was over, if he had got out, the whole business would come to light. I should have been court-martialed and shot, as likely as not. For people were not that lenient at a time like this. Go on with your story, said Holmes shortly. Well, we carried him in, Abdullah, Akbar, and I. Fine weight he was, too, for all that he was short. Muhammad's son was left to guard the door, and we took him to a place which Six had already prepared. It was some distance off, where a winding passage leads to an empty hall. Brick walls, which were crumbling to pieces. The earth floor had sunk in at one place, making a natural grave. So we left Ahmed the merchant there, having him covered first with loose stones. This done, we all went back to the treasure. It lay where he had dropped it, and when he was first attacked. The box was the same one that now lies upon your table. The key was strung by a silken cord to that carved handle upon the top. We opened it, and in the light of the lantern gleamed upon a collection of gems as such I have read and thought about as a little lad in Persia. It was blinding to look upon. When I had feasted our eyes, we took them all out and made a list of them. There were 143 diamonds in the first water, including one which has been called, I believe, the Great Mogul, which is said to be the second largest stone in existence. Then there were 97 fine emeralds, 170 rubies, some of which, however, were small. There were 40 carbuncles, 210 sapphires, 61 agates, and a great quantity of brilliant onyxes, cat's eyes, turquoise, and other stones. The very names of which I didn't know at the time, though I have become more familiar with them since. Besides this, there were nearly 300 very fine pearls, 12 of which were set in gold coronets. By the way, last had been taken out of the chest, and were not there when I recovered it. After we had counted the treasure, we put them back into the chest and carried them to the gateway to show the Demonet's sign. Then we solemnly renewed our oaths to stand by each other and be true to our secret. We agreed to conceal our loot in a safe place until the country should be at peace again, then divide it equally among ourselves. There was no use dividing it at present, for if gems of such value were found upon us, it would cause suspicion. And there was no privacy in the fort, nor any other place we could be kept them. We carried the box, therefore, into the same hall where we had buried the body. There, under certain bricks in the well-preserved wall, we made a hollow, put our treasure at the bottom, for we had sworn that it would always act for us, so that the none might take advantage. This was an oath that I can never put out of my hand, my heart, and I swear that I have never broken it. Well, there's no use of my telling you, gentlemen, what came of any news. After Wilson took Delhi and Sir Cohen received Lucknow, the back of the business was broken. Fresh troops were pouring in, and Nana Sahib made himself scarce over the frontier. The flying column of Colonel Gathard came around the Agra and cleaned up the Pandys away from us. Peace seemed to be settling upon the country, and we four might safely go off with a share of the plunder. In a moment, however, our hopes were shattered by our being arrested for the murders of Ahmed. It came about this way. When the Raja put his jewels in the hands of Ahmed, he did it because he knew that he was a trusty man. There's suspicion of folk in the east, however, so what does Raj do? The second, even more trusty servants set him to play a spy upon the first. The second man was ordered never to let Ahmed out of sight. He followed him in shadow. He went after him that night and saw him pass through the doorway. Of course, he thought that he had taken refuge at the fort and applied for admission there himself the next day. But he could find no trace of Ahmed. It seemed to be so strange that he spoke about the sergeant of guides. It brought it to the ears of the commander, and through search was quickly made, and the body was discovered. Thus, at the very moment that we thought all was safe, we were all four seized and brought to trial on charge of murder. Three of us because we had held the gate that night, and the fourth because he was known to have been in the company of his murderous man. Not a word about the jewels came out of the trial. The Rajah had deposed and driven out of India, so no one had ever particularly interested in them. The murderer, however, was clearly concerned upon. It was certain that we must all take concern in it. The 36 got penal servitude for life, and I was condemned to death, though my sentence was afterwards commuted into the same as the others. It was a rather queer position that we found ourselves in then. There were all four of us by the leg, and by curious little chance of ever getting out again. While we each held secrets that might have put us each in the palace if we had only made use of it. It was enough to make a man eat his heart out to have us stand near the kick, cuff of every petty jacket office. To have rice to eat and water to drink, when a gorgeous fortune was ready for him outside, just waiting to be picked up. Might have driven me mad, but I was always a pretty stubborn one, so I just held on and bided my time. At last it seemed to me to have come. I was changing from Agra to Madras, and from there to Blair Island to the Adamant. There was very few white convicts at the settlement, and As I was behaved well from the first, I was soon found myself sort of privileged person. I was given a hut in Hope Town, which was a small place on the slopes of Mount Harriet, and I was left pretty much to myself. It was a dreary, fever-stricken place, and all beyond our little clearing was infested with wild, cannibal natives who were ready enough to blow a poisoned dart at us if they saw a chance. There was digging and ditching and yam planting and a dozen other things to be done, so we were busy enough all day, though in the evening we had little time to ourselves. Among other things, I learned to dispense drugs for a surgeon, picked up a smattering of his knowledge. All the time, I was on the lookout for a chance to escape, but it is hundreds of miles from any other land. There is little to no wind in the seas, so it was a terribly difficult job to get away. The surgeon, Dr. Somerton, was a fast, sporting young chap. The other young officers would meet in his rooms and play cards. The surgery, where I used to make up my drugs, was next to a sitting room, with a small window between us. Often, if I felt lonesome, I would turn out the lamp in the surgery, and then, standing there, I could hear their talk and watch their play. I'm fond of a hand at cards myself. It was almost as good as having one to watch the others. There was Major Sholto, Captain Mostyn, and Lieutenant Bromley Brown, who were all in command of the native troops, and there was a surgeon himself, and two or three prison officials, crafty old hands who played a nice, sly, safe game. Little snug little party used to make. Well, there was one thing which very soon struck me, and that was that the soldiers used always to loosen the civilians to the wind. Mind, I don't say that there was anything unfair, so as it was. Prison chaps had done little else than play cards ever since they had been admirals, and they knew each other's game to the point, while the others just played to pass time and threw their cards down anyway. Night after night, soldiers got what more poorer they got, more keen they were to play. Major Sholto was the first hardest hit. He used to play in the notes and gold at first, but soon it came to notes at hand for big sums. He sometimes would win a few deals, just to give him heart, and then the luck would set him against him more than ever. All day he would wander about the black as thunder. He took to drinking a deal more than was good for him. One night he lost even more heavily than usual. I was sitting at my hut when he and Captain Morrison came stumbling along into the quarters. They were bosom friends, those two, were never far apart. The Major was raving about his losses. "It's all up, Morstan," he was saying as they passed by my hut. "I shall have to send in my papers. I'm a ruined man." "Nonsense, old chap," said the other, slapping him across the shoulder. "I've had a nasty facer myself, but that was all I could hear. It was enough to get me thinking." A couple days later, Major Sholto was strolling upon the beach, and I took a chance of speaking to him. "I wish to have your advice, Major," said I. "Well, Small, what is it?" he asked, taking his chum shoe from his lips. "I wanted to ask you, sir," I said, "who is the proper person to whom hidden treasure should be handed over? I know where 500,000 worth lies, and as I cannot use it myself, I thought perhaps the best thing that I could do was to hand it over to the proper authorities, and then perhaps they could get my sentence shorted for me." "500,000, Small?" he gasped, looking hard at me as if it was in earnest. "Quite that, sir, in jewels and pearls. It lies there ready for anyone. queer thing about it is that the real owner is outlawed and can't hold property, so that it belongs to the first comer. To government, Small, stammered. To government. But he said in a halting fashion, and I knew in my heart that I got him. You think then, sir, that I should give the information to the Governor General? I said quietly. Well, then, sir, that I should give the information. Well, you must not do anything rash, or that you might repent. Let me hear all about it, Small. Give me the facts. I told him the whole story with small changes, so that he would not identify the places. When I had finished, he stood stock still and full of thought. I could see by the twitch of his lip that there was a struggle going on within him. This is a very important matter, Small, he said at last. I must not say a word to anyone about this, but I shall see you soon again. 2 nights later, he and his friend Captain Morrison came into my hut in the dead of the night with them. I want you to let Captain Morrison hear that story from your own lips, Small, said he. I repeated as I had told it before. It rings true, said he. It's good enough to act. Morrison nodded. Look here, Small, said the Major. We have been talking it over, a friend and I here, and we have come to the conclusion that this secret of yours is hardly a government matter. After all, but is a private matter of your own, which, of course, you have the power of disposing of as you wish. Now the question is, what price would you ask for it? We might be inclined to take it up, and at least look into it, if we could agree to terms. He tried to speak in a cool, careless way, but his eyes were shining with expression. Why, it's that, gentlemen, I answered, trying also to be cool, but feeling as excited as he did. There's only one bargain which a man in my position can make. I shall want you to help me to my freedom, and help my 3 companions to theirs. We shall take you into partnership and give you a fifth share divided between you. Said. A fifth share? That is not very tempting. It would come to 50,000 apiece, said I. But how can we gain your freedom? You know very well that you ask is an impossibility. Nothing of the sort, I answered. I have thought it all out in the last detail. The only bar to escape is that we can get no boat fit for the voyage, no provisions to last the Yolls of Calcutta or Madras, which would serve our turn well. Do you bring one over? We shall engage to get order by night, and if you drop us in the part of the Indian coast, you will have done your part in the bargain. If there were only one, he said. None or all, I answered. We have sworn it. The 4 of us must always act together. You see, Morrison, he said, Small is a man of his word. He does not flinch from his friends. I think we may very well trust him. It's a dirty business, the other answered. Yet, as you say, money will serve our missions. Well, small, said the Major. We must, I suppose, try and meet you. We must first, of course, test the truth of your story. Tell me where the box is hid. I shall get leave of absence and go back to India. The leaf boat to inquire into the affair. Not so fast, said I. Holders, he got hot. I must have the consent of my three comrades. I tell you that it's four or none of us. Nonsense, he said. What have three black fellows to do with our government? Black or blue, I said. They are in with me, and we all go together. Well, the matter ended by a second meeting, which the sign Abdullah Khan and Dos Akbar were all present. We talked the matter over, and at last we came to an agreement to provide the officers with charts of the parts of the Abbey Fort and mark on the place on the wall where the treasure was hid. Major Sholto was to go test our theory. If he found the box, he was to leave it there, to send out a small yacht devised for the voyage, which was to lie off the Rutland Island, and to which we were to make our way and finally return to his duties. Captain Morrison was then to apply for leave of absence, meet us at Agra. There we were to have a final division of the treasure, taking the Major's share as well as his own. At this, we sealed all, solemn oaths that the mind could think of, the lips utter. I sat up all night with paper and ink, and in the morning I had two charts already, signed with the sign of the four, that is, Abdullah, Akbar, Muhammad, and myself. Well, gentlemen, I weary you with a long story, and I know that my friend Mr. Jones is impatient to get me safely stowed in Choki. I'll make it as short as I can. The villain Sholto went off to India, but he never came back again. Captain Morrison showed me his name. Some passengers in one of the mailboats very shortly afterwards. His uncle had died, leaving him a fortune, and he had left the army, yet he did not stoop to treat 5 men as he had treated us. Morrison went over to Agra shortly afterwards and found, as we expected, that the treasure was indeed gone. The scoundrel had stolen it without carrying out one of the conditions on which he had sold him the secret. From that day I lived only for vengeance. I thought of it day, I nursed it by night. It became overpowering, absorbing passion with me. I cared nothing for the law, nothing for the gallows. To escape, to track down Sholto, to have my hand on his throat, that I made one thought. Even the Agra treasure had come to be a smaller thing in my mind. Slaying Sholto. I've set my mind on many things in life, and never one which I did not carry out. But it was weary years before my time came. I have told you that I had not picked up something of medicine. One day, when Dr. Summerton was down with fever and was all adamant I was picked up by a convict getting words. He was sick to death and had gone to a lonely place to die. I took him in hand, as venomous as a young snake, and after a couple of months I got him all right and able to walk. He took a kind of fancy to me then. I could hardly go back to those woods, but was always hanging about in my huts. I learned the lingo from him that made him all the fonder of me. Tonga, for that was his name, was a fine boatman. He owned a big, roomy canoe of his own. When I found that he had devoted to me, do anything to serve me, I saw my chance to escape. I talked it over with him. He was to bring the boat over to certain heights of the old wharf, which was never guarded. There he was to pick me up. I gave him directions to the several gourds of water and lots of yams, coconuts, sweet potatoes. He was stanch and true to the promise. No man ever had a more faithful mate. The night named, he had as good as a dwarf. As it chanced, however, there was 100 guards down there. Vile Pathan who was never missed a chance of insulting or injuring. Had always vowed vengeance. Now I had my chance. It was as if fate had placed him in a pay debt for him to the end. He stood on the bank with his back to me, his carbine on his shoulder. I looked about for some stone to beat out his brains. None. Then a queer thought came into my head. It showed me where I could lay my hand on his weapon. I sat down in the darkness and unstrapped my wooden leg. With 3 long hops I was on him, put his carbine to his shoulder. I struck him full, knocked the whole front of his skull. You can see the splint in the wood now where I hit him. We both went down together, for I could not keep my balance, but when I got up I found him lying. I made for the boat, and in an hour we were well out to sea. Tonga had brought all his earthly possessions with him, his arms, and his gods. Among other things, he had a long bamboo spear and some adamant and coconut matting, with which I made a sort of sail. For 10 days we were beating about, trusting to luck, and on the 11th we picked up by a trader which was going to Singapore, to Judah, with a cargo of Malay. They were a rum crowd, and Tonka and I were soon managed to settle down among them. They had one very good quality. They let you alone and asked questions. Well, if I were to tell you the adventures of my little chum and I went through, you would not thank me, for I'd have you here until the sun was shining. Here and there we drifted about the world, something always turning up to keep us from one. All the time, however, I never lost sight of my purpose. I would dream of Sholto at nights. 100 times I killed him in sleep. Alas, however, some 3 or 4 years ago, we found ourselves in England. I had no great difficulty in finding Sholto, and I set to work to discover whether he realized the treasure, if he still had it. I made friends with someone who could help me. I for I don't want to get anyone else in the hole. And I soon found out that he still had the jewels. Then I tried to get him in many ways, but he was pretty sly. He always had 2 prize fighters besides his sons and his kitten Margaret guard. One day, however, I got word that he was dying. I hurried at once to the garden, mad that he'd slip out of my clutches like that. Looking through the window, I saw him lying on his bed with his 2 sons on either side of him. I'd have come through and taken my chance with the 3 men. Even when I looked at him, his jaw dropped. I knew that he was gone. I got into his room the same night, so I had searched his papers to see if there was any record where he had jewels. There was not a line. So I came away, bitter, savage as a man could be. Before I left, I bethought me that if I ever met my sick friends again, it would be in satisfaction to know that I had left some mark of our hatred. So I scrawled down the sign on the floor of us, and as it had been on the chart, and pinned it on his bosom. It was too much that he should be taken to the grave without some token from the men robbed and fooled. We earned our living at this time by exhibiting poor Tonga at fairs and other such places as Black Cannibal. He would eat raw meat and dance his war dance, so we always had a handful of pennies at the work day. I still heard all the news from Pondicherry Lodge, and for some years there was no news to hear, except that they were hunting for treasure. At last, however, came what we'd waited for so long. Treasure had been found. It was up at the top of the house in Mr. Bartholomew Sholto's chemical lab. So I came at once and had a look at the place. I could not see how with I was to make my way up to it. I learned, however, about the trapdoor in the roof, and also about Mr. Sholto's supper hour. It seemed to me that I could manage the thing easily through Tonga. I brought him with me to climb along the rope at his waist. He could climb like a cat. As soon as he made his way to the roof, but as ill luck would have it, Tonga Sholto was still on his cost. Tonga thought he had done something very clever again, for when I came up by the group, I found him strutting about, as proud as a peacock, very much surprised when he was taken aback by what he had done with the rope. I cursed him being a little bloodthirsty imp. Took the treasure box and laid it down, and then I slid down myself, having first left the sign of the fork on the table, showing them that the jewels had gone back to those who right to them. Tonga then pulled up the rope to the window, and made off the way he had come. I don't know that I have anything else to tell you. I had heard the watermen speak of the speed of the launch and Aurora, and so I thought it would be a handy craft for our escape. Engage Mr. Smith to give him a big sum if he got us safe into a ship. He knew, no doubt, that there were some screw loose, but he did not want in our secrets. All this is truth. If I tell you, gentlemen, it is not to amuse you, for you have not done me a very good turn. It is because I believe the best defense I can make is just to hold back nothing. Let all the world know how badly I have myself served by Sholto, how innocent I am after the death of his son. A very remarkable account, said Sherlock Holmes. A fitting wind-up to an extremely interesting case. There is nothing at all new to me except the latter part of your narrative, except that you brought your own rope. That I did not know. By the way, I had hoped that Tonga had lost all his darts, yet he managed to shoot one at us in the boat. He had lost all of them, sir, except the one which was still at his blowpipe at the time. Ah, of course. Besides, I had not thought of that. Is there any other point which you would like to ask about? Asked the convict affably. I think not. Thank you, I answered. Well, Holmes, said Athelin Jones, you're a man to be humoured, and well know that you're a connoisseur of crime. But duty is duty, and I have gone rather far in doing what you and your friend have asked. I shall feel more at ease when we have our storyteller here under safe lock and key. The cab still waits, and there are two inspectors downstairs. I'm much obliged to you both for your assistance. Of course, you will be wanted at the trial. Good night to you. Good night, gentlemen both, said Jonathan Small. You first, Small, remarked Larry Jones as he left the room. I'll take particular care that you don't club me with your wooden leg. Whatever you may have done with the genteel man, Adam Isles. Well, and there's the end of our little drama, remarked after we had sat down some time in silence. I fear that it may be the last investigation in which I shall have the chance of studying your methods. Miss Morstenen has done me the honor to accept me as a husband in prospective. He gave a dismal grin. I feared as much, he said. I cannot congratulate you, though.
I was a little hurt.
Have you any reason to be dissatisfied with my choice? I asked. Not at all. I think she is one of the most charming young ladies I have ever met, and might have been keen and almost useful in such work as we have been doing. She has a decided genius way. Witness the way in which she preserved that agro plan from all the other papers of her father. But love is an emotional thing. Whatever is emotion is opposed to that of true, cold reason, which I place above all things. I should never marry myself, lest I bias my judgment. I trust, I said, laughing, that my judgment may survive the ordeal. But you look weary. Yes, reaction is upon me already. I shall be as limp as a rag for a week. Strange, said I. How terms of what another man should call laziness alternate with your fits of splendid energy and vigor. Yes, he answered. There are in me the makings of a very fine loafer, and also the pretty spry sort of fellow. I often think of those old lines of old Goethe. Schad dass der Mutter nur einen Wunsch aus der Schluff, den zum behelligen Mann vor und zum Schilfberg der Sof. By the way, I propose of this noble business. You see that they had, as I surmised, a confederate in the house, who could have been none other than Lao Lao, the butler. So Jones actually has an undivided honor of having caught one fish in his great net. The division seems rather unfair, I remarked. You have done all the work in this business. I get a wife of it. Jones gets the credit. Pray, what remains for you? For me, said Sherlock Holmes, there still remains the cocaine bottle. And he stretched his long white hand up for it.